John came from a humble Christian family, but his destiny was about to be ruined by the very person he loved the most. After his father's death, Madam Gloria, his mother, began revealing her true nature. She constantly abused him, comparing him to Samuel, the wealthy son of their neighbor. Her endless criticism and pressure pushed John to follow Samuel to the city, where he was introduced to a money ritual that promised him overnight riches. At first, the wealth was overwhelming. John had everything he had ever dreamed of. However, beneath the luxury, he was drowning in misery. The ritual came with a terrible price. Every night, he transformed into a monstrous beast, one that needed to devour a woman each week to sustain his wealth. Instead of seeking a way to break this horrifying curse, Madam Gloria embraced it. She took it upon herself to lure multiple women to John each week, ensuring he had enough sacrifices so the money would never stop flowing. Her greed blinded her to the suffering her son was going through. But John was growing increasingly uneasy. He had begun noticing a disturbing pattern. The others who had performed the same ritual were dying mysteriously. Even Samuel, the very person who introduced him to the old sorcerer, had just lost his life after failing one of the ritual's tasks. Fear gripped John, and he knew he had to put an end to this before it was too late. "I can't continue with this," John told his mother one evening. "I'm stopping the ritual." Madam Gloria's expression darkened instantly. She refused to entertain the idea. "Listen to me, my dear son," she said firmly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I am your mother. I would never let anything bad happen to you. Just trust me. As long as I keep bringing women for you, you will be safe. Nothing will harm you. Believe me." John remained silent, trapped in his thoughts. He was torn between his desire to break free and the manipulative reassurance of his mother. Madam Gloria, sensing his hesitation, smiled to herself. She was convinced she still had control over him, unaware that she was digging her own grave. For days, John was lost in deep reflection. The weight of the sacrifices, the guilt of taking innocent lives, and the horror of his transformation haunted him. He couldn't fathom how far he had strayed in his pursuit of wealth and power. "What's the point of all this money if I don't even have peace of mind?" he asked himself. At that moment, he made a firm decision. He would turn a new leaf. He would find a way to undo the ritual, even if it meant losing everything he had gained. However, he knew he couldn't tell his mother. She would never allow it. The very next day, John traveled to the shrine of the old native doctor who had performed the ritual on him. He had no idea what to expect, but he was desperate for a way out. "Baba, I have come for only one reason," John said boldly. "I need you to undo the spell you cast on me. I can't continue taking innocent lives. Even if I lose all my wealth, I don't care. I just want to be free. Please help me." The old man remained silent, studying him carefully. Then, he picked up his cowries and threw them onto the mat in front of him, chanting strange incantations. Minutes passed, and then the sorcerer abruptly stopped. He closed his eyes as if in deep meditation, leaving John waiting in suspense. Finally he spoke. "The spirits have heard your plea. Fortunately, there is a way to break the curse, but it comes with a price. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to be free?" John's heart pounded. He was both surprised and relieved to hear there was a solution. He had feared he would be trapped in this nightmare forever. Now he was ready to do anything, even if it meant losing all his wealth. The old man's lips curled into a faint smile. "To be free, you must make one final sacrifice. You must give up the person you love the most. The spirits have spoken. It must be your mother." John froze. His entire body went numb. He had come seeking freedom, but never in his wildest dreams did he expect this. "You must sacrifice her," the old man continued. "Once you do, the curse will be broken. You will no longer transform into a beast, and you will be free from the grip of the ritual forever." John's breath caught in his throat. His own mother, the woman who had pushed him into this darkness, was now the price for his redemption. The decision before him was the most difficult one he had ever faced. John's initial relief quickly turned to despair as he processed what the native doctor had just told him. The thought of sacrificing his own mother sent shivers down his spine. He told the old man that he needed time to think about it before making any decisions. Back at home, John was overwhelmed with emotions. He broke down in tears, unable to believe the condition that had been placed before him. He was willing to do anything to break free from the torment he was experiencing, but taking his mother's life, that was unthinkable. No matter what, he couldn't bring himself to harm the woman who had raised him, even if it meant putting himself in harm's way. Right then he made up his mind. He would not sacrifice his mother. At the same time, he resolved to stop taking innocent lives. He knew this decision would anger the dark forces controlling him, but he no longer cared. That evening something unusual happened. Madam Gloria had brought home a group of young, beautiful women. Hookup girls she had lured with promises of wealth. She laughed with them, completely unaware of the grave danger they were in. John immediately understood what was happening. These were the women meant for the next sacrifice. Disgust and fury welled up inside him. "Mama, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice sharp with anger. "What are these girls doing in my house?" The room fell silent. "Before I close and open my eyes, all of you should leave this place immediately," he thundered. "Or I'll set my dogs on you." The frightened women hurriedly grabbed their belongings, but before they left, John tossed them some money to share among themselves. Outside, they fumed with disappointment, having expected the financial reward Madam Gloria had promised them the next morning. Little did they know, they had just been spared from a horrifying fate. Back inside, Madam Gloria was livid. She turned to John, her face twisted with anger. "Have you lost your mind?" she yelled. "Do you know how much effort I put into getting these girls for you? Where am I supposed to find another one before nightfall?" John didn't flinch. "Mama, let today be the last time you bring any woman into this house for me to devour. I am sick and tired of this. These women are human beings, not objects to be sacrificed," he declared firmly. "I have made my decision. I won't do it anymore, even if it costs me everything." Madam Gloria was stunned by his sudden defiance. She broke down into tears, using her usual manipulative tactics. "How can you say this? How do you expect to provide for me and your younger siblings if you stop? Are you going to let us suffer?" she wailed. But this time her tears had no effect. John's mind was made up. Madam Gloria, on the other hand, was devastated. She knew that if John stopped performing the rituals, it was only a matter of time before their wealth would start vanishing. The luxurious life she had been enjoying would slip away, and she wasn't ready to let that happen. As days passed, the tension between mother and son grew worse. Madam Gloria constantly nagged and insulted him, but John ignored her. Whenever the arguments became unbearable, he would leave the house and go to a nearby recreational park to clear his mind. However, things took a darker turn. Since John had stopped feeding the beast, the spirits controlling him grew furious. Every night, he still transformed into the monstrous creature. But now, with no sacrifices, the torment intensified. The growls and roars from his room became louder, and each morning, he woke up with deep wounds and excruciating pain, as if he had been beaten all night. He knew the spirits were punishing him for refusing to continue the sacrifices. Some days he was so weak he could barely move. He was trapped in a nightmare, unable to find a way out. Meanwhile, Madam Gloria had no idea of the suffering her son was going through because of her. Every morning when she saw his bruised and battered body, instead of showing concern, she mocked him. "You're such a weakling," she sneered. "You're not man enough. Keep deceiving yourself, but soon you'll realize you have no choice. You'd better start sacrificing these women again before it's too late." Her words cut deep, leaving John feeling even more miserable. He sank into depression. Whenever he stayed home for too long, suicidal thoughts plagued his mind. He was at the lowest point in his life, uncertain of what to do. But then, something unexpected happened. Every afternoon at the park, John noticed a particular woman who often passed by while walking her dog. She was a beautiful and graceful lady named Grace. She would always stop to greet him politely before continuing on her way. This happened repeatedly until, one day, they struck up a conversation. Over time they became close friends. Grace, a young doctor who had just completed medical school, was kind and full of life. She would sit with John for hours, talking and laughing, bringing a rare sense of peace into his troubled world. Before long, their friendship blossomed into love. For the first time in years, John felt like he had something to live for. He stopped drinking, abandoned his vices, and much to his surprise, the terrifying voices in his head became less frequent. 3 months into their relationship, John proposed to Grace, and she joyfully accepted. She had no idea about the dark secret he was hiding. John feared that if she ever found out, she would leave him. Despite this, he was happier than he had ever been. His life was finally beginning to make sense. When he informed Madam Gloria of his plans to marry Grace, her reaction was explosive. She raged at him, furious that he was abandoning his old ways. "You're throwing away everything for a woman," she screamed. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." But John no longer cared about her opinions. He had made his choice. Despite his mother's disapproval, he married Grace, and she soon moved into his home. However, what neither of them knew was that the past had a way of catching up, and John's dark secret was far from buried. The moment Grace stepped into her new home, she felt an unsettling presence, as if something was terribly wrong. However, she couldn't quite put her finger on what was causing this eerie feeling. On their wedding night, something strange happened that left Grace confused. After a long and exhausting day, she and John retired to bed. She quickly fell asleep but suddenly woke up in the middle of the night to find the bed beside her empty. Her husband was nowhere to be seen. Startled, she called out, "Sweetheart, where are you?" But there was no response. She checked the bathroom, empty. She hurried downstairs, searching for him, but he was nowhere to be found. Worry crept in. Where could he be? She wondered. The next morning, she was startled awake by John's voice. "Honey, good morning. How was your night?" Relieved but still concerned, she asked. "Sweetheart, where were you last night? I searched everywhere for you. You had me so worried. I could barely sleep." Her face was filled with concern. John had expected this question and had already prepared his answer. Smiling, he replied, "Oh, that? I forgot to tell you, I was in my study. I have online work I must attend to every night. Please don't worry about it." Though his response seemed reasonable, Grace was not entirely convinced. Nevertheless, she decided to trust him. But as the nights passed, John's repeated disappearances troubled her deeply. Every morning when she questioned him, his response was always the same. "Honey, I was in my study attending to my online clients. There's nothing to worry about," he reassured her. Yet, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong, especially on mornings when John returned with bruises and scratches all over his body. "John, please tell me the truth. What happened to you? Were you in a fight? Why are you injured?" she would ask, her concern growing. John would give vague explanations and quickly change the subject. His evasiveness left her frustrated and deeply unsettled. Adding to her worries, Grace often overheard heated arguments between John and Madam Gloria. But the moment they noticed her presence, they would abruptly stop. It was clear that they were hiding something from her, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't uncover their secret. What she didn't know was that her husband transformed into a monstrous beast every night. Because his secret chamber was soundproof, she never heard the terrifying sounds coming from within. Meanwhile, another issue troubled Grace. Her mother-in-law, Madam Gloria, treated her with hostility. No matter what Grace did, it was never good enough. The constant nagging and insults made her feel unwelcome and deeply saddened. She often wondered, what have I done to deserve this? Why does she hate me so much? But no matter how hard she tried to win Madam Gloria's affection, it was futile. The truth was, Madam Gloria despised Grace. She believed that Grace was the reason John had stopped performing the money rituals. Every time Grace brought up the issue of her mother-in-law's behavior to John, he would brush it off. "Sweetheart, don't stress yourself. You know how mothers can be. She will warm up to you in time," he would say, trying to reassure her. John truly believed that with time, his mother would come to accept Grace. But little did he know that a storm was brewing, one that would shake their lives to the core. Madam Gloria was growing increasingly frustrated. Since John had stopped the rituals, the money she once freely spent was dwindling. She dreaded the thought of going broke and saw Grace as the obstacle standing in her way. That's when she made a chilling decision. Grace had to be eliminated. With Grace out of the picture, she was certain John would return to his old ways. She began plotting how to get rid of her daughter-in-law without suspicion falling on her. However, just as she was scheming, something unexpected happened. Joyous laughter echoed through the house. It was John and Grace celebrating something. Madam Gloria was taken aback. What could be making them so happy? Then John delivered the news. "Mother, Grace is pregnant. We're going to have a baby," he announced excitedly. Madam Gloria froze. Shock coursed through her, but she quickly masked her emotions. Forcing a smile, she exclaimed, "Wow, I'm going to be a grandmother." She rushed to embrace Grace, pretending to be overjoyed. John popped open a bottle of wine, and they all celebrated together. But beneath Madam Gloria's feigned happiness, her hatred burned even hotter. She realized the pregnancy had solidified Grace's place in the family. No trick or scheme could make John abandon her now. This realization filled her with despair and rage. That's when she made up her mind. She would kill Grace, even if it meant taking the life of her own grandchild. She had no remorse. She didn't care that innocent women had already lost their lives to the rituals. All she cared about was regaining her luxurious lifestyle. For the next few days, she plotted the perfect murder, one that would eliminate Grace without arousing suspicion. After much thought, she devised a sinister plan. She would lure Grace out of her bedroom in the dead of night and into the living room. Then, she would secretly unlock John's chamber, allowing the beast to escape and attack Grace. Pleased with her wicked plan, she smiled to herself. It was simple, effective, and untraceable. But to make her scheme work, she needed Grace to trust her completely. So, over the next few days, Madam Gloria transformed into a loving and caring mother-in-law. She showered Grace with affection, called her sweet names, and even forbade her from doing any household chores. She took over the cooking and cleaning, making sure Grace was always comfortable. Grace, unaware of the evil brewing behind the kindness, was delighted. She believed her mother-in-law had finally accepted her. Maybe she's just being nice because I'm carrying her grandchild. She doesn't want me to stress myself, she thought with a smile. Little did she know she was walking straight into a deadly trap. Before we conclude this story, let me know where you're watching from by dropping a comment below where you are watching from. I'd love to send you a special shout out in our next video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. Now let's jump right in. On that fateful night, Madam Gloria had a sinister plan in motion. Meanwhile, Grace and John had retired to their bedroom, exhausted from the day's activities, and soon drifted off into deep sleep, completely unaware of the danger lurking ahead. At exactly midnight, John carefully sneaked out of their bedroom upstairs and made his way to his secret room downstairs. His place of confinement every night to prevent himself from harming Grace. Meanwhile, in her own bedroom, Madam Gloria was wide awake, staring at the clock with an expression of ruthless determination. By 2 a.m., at the darkest hour of the night, she set her evil plan into action. She knew that this was the exact moment John would undergo his terrifying transformation. Grace was abruptly awakened by a soft knock on her bedroom door. It was Madam Gloria's voice calling to her from outside. "My dear, please come downstairs. Your husband sent me to get you," she said in a calm but urgent tone. Grace, though fatigued, was puzzled by the strange request. However, she had no reason to suspect anything sinister, so she assured Madam Gloria that she would be down in a moment. That was all the older woman needed. Smiling to herself, she hurried downstairs to proceed with the next phase of her plan. She had a spare key to John's locked room, and everything had been carefully calculated. Her plan was simple: unlock the door, then rush back to her own room and secure herself inside, leaving the beast to roam freely, waiting for Grace to arrive. With quick movements, she unlocked the door and pushed it open before sprinting back toward her room as fast as her legs could carry her. But in that instant, terror gripped her. She had gravely underestimated just how fast the beast was. John, now in his monstrous form, had been starved for months. The moment the door creaked open, he seized the opportunity to escape. And the first scent that hit him was that of Madam Gloria, desperately hungry for blood. He locked onto his prey and lunged forward with terrifying speed. Meanwhile, Grace was still in her room, preparing to go downstairs when she suddenly heard strange and unsettling noises coming from the living room. It was the unmistakable sound of a wild animal, growling and howling violently. A chill ran down her spine. Then, a piercing scream shattered the silence. It was Madam Gloria's voice. Without hesitation, Grace grabbed John's gun and rushed out of her bedroom, ready to risk everything for her family. But the sight that greeted her in the living room made her freeze in shock. Madam Gloria lay on the floor, writhing in agony, drenched in a pool of her own blood as a monstrous beast sank its teeth into her flesh. What startled Grace even more was that as Madam Gloria screamed, an eerie amount of money gushed out from her body, as if her very being had been tied to wealth. Then suddenly, the beast stopped attacking and lifted its head, sensing another presence in the room. Its glowing eyes locked onto Grace. In a heartbeat, it charged at her. Terrified, Grace shut her eyes, raised the gun with trembling hands, and pulled the trigger. A gut-wrenching roar of pain filled the air as the bullet struck its target. The beast collapsed, writhing in agony. And then, before Grace's astonished eyes, the transformation began. The monstrous figure shrank and shifted, revealing John's battered and bloodied form. Grace was paralyzed with shock. John lay groaning in pain, his spine severely injured by the gunshot. On the other side of the room, Madam Gloria was losing blood rapidly, her body mangled from the attack. Despite the whirlwind of emotions racing through her mind, Grace knew she had to act fast. She rushed to retrieve medical supplies from the house, determined to save them. But as she approached Madam Gloria, the dying woman weakly reached out, stopping her. In a faint, barely audible voice, she whispered, "Grace, I'm sorry. I wronged you in so many ways. Please find it in your heart to forgive me." Tears welled in Grace's eyes. Madam Gloria continued, her breath growing weaker. "Promise me that you'll stand by my son. He's a good man. I was the one who led him down this dark path." A single tear rolled down Grace's cheek as she listened to the woman's last request. And then, with one final breath, Madam Gloria was gone. Grace wasted no time. She called a surgeon, who rushed to the scene with medical equipment. The bullet was successfully removed from John's spine, while Madam Gloria's remains were taken to the morgue. When word spread to John's relatives, they were left in disbelief. Given the dark circumstances of her passing, Madam Gloria was buried in the evil forest of their hometown. John eventually regained consciousness, but the damage had already been done. The bullet had permanently damaged his spine, leaving him confined to a wheelchair. Overcome with guilt, he begged Grace for forgiveness. With a soft smile, she took his hand and reassured him, "I forgave you a long time ago. I can see that you've changed. But you should never have kept such a dark secret from me." She then told him about a powerful man of God who could help him once and for all. A glimmer of hope appeared in John's eyes. The very next day, Grace took him to a church, where a team of prayer warriors, led by a pastor, interceded on his behalf. They prayed throughout the night, calling on the name of Jesus to break the demonic curse. In the midst of the prayers, John let out a loud scream and collapsed onto the ground. In that instant, the dark force left his body, and he felt an overwhelming sense of peace. He had been delivered. The following day, as a sign of true repentance, John sold everything he had acquired through questionable means and donated the proceeds to charity. He and Grace moved to a modest home, determined to start anew. John, now a transformed man, dedicated his life to preaching against the dangers of chasing wealth through dark and evil means. His testimony became so powerful that he was invited to speak at conferences, where he shared his journey to inspire others. As for Grace, joy returned to her life when she later gave birth to a healthy baby boy, bringing happiness to their home. Though John remained confined to a wheelchair, Grace's love for him never wavered. Determined to uplift his family, John brought his younger siblings from the village, enrolling them in good schools and ensuring they lived meaningful lives. Grace and John grew old together, cherishing each moment and living a life filled with purpose. And that, dear viewers, brings us to the end of this story. What lessons did you learn? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching today's episode from Illyria Studios. Please support my work by subscribing to this channel, turning on the notification bell, and sharing this video with your loved ones. See you in the next story.